All right, friend. So I want to jump into something real fun. I want to give you my 10 commandments on creative financing. Now, I know a lot of folks talk about creative financing, and over the last 10 years, I have specialized in it. It is something I consider myself a student of, and really never stopping in the sense of studying it and trying to master it. So, with that being said, I've thought long and hard about this, and I want to give you the 10 commandments of creative financing. Now, stick with me here. We're going to build through each one of them. All right, so commandment number one. I believe that not every seller needs to sell on creative financing. So this is really important. If you're an investor and you want to do creative deals, you have to understand that every seller you come across is not going to be a great fit for a creative financing offer. Now, with that being said, it's similar to cash, right? Like every seller you come across, you have to qualify them to find out, are they a good fit for you to make a low cash offer to, right? A discounted cash offer. Now, when it comes to creative deals, a seller will take it when the benefit is something that they want, that they need. And so learn the benefits of creative financing, the different types of creative financing structures, and learn how to pitch them to sellers because when it's a good deal for them, when they understand the benefits and they understand it's something how it would benefit them, that is when you can get into more deals, right? But if a seller doesn't have a problem that would, benefit having the certain type of creative deal structure, again, not all sellers should sell on creative financing terms. Now, ultimately, commandment number two falls into this, that not every buyer should buy with creative financing terms. So that really kind of goes into this concept that my greatest currency that I use is not money. It's promises when I do creative financing deals. It's me making a promise to make payments to a seller over time. It's me making a promise to take over making the payments on someone's behalf, right? And so it's really important for people to understand that creative financing shouldn't be someone's default just because they don't have money. It shouldn't be the default because a bank won't touch them. It should really, you should understand that it is a promise being made, and not everyone cares about the promises they make. It's one thing if you make a promise to an institution and you don't pay them. It's very different when you make a promise to an individual, whether it's a payment to them or a payment on their behalf. And if you don't care about that promise, that is why I say not all buyers should buy with creative financing. So I think this is really important that you should learn how to do it. You should learn how to do it correctly. And then you should figure out if it's the best fit for you. So again, shouldn't just be a default because you don't have money, right? Now, the third commandment here, stick with me, I promise it gets a little bit more maybe lighthearted, a little bit better here is, don't be structure oriented. So the third commandment in creative financing has to deal with, different deal structures. So it could be seller finance, subject to master lease options, pure options, various different things, right? A lot of people, they will go and learn at a conference, they'll read a book, they hear a case study of a deal about a certain case, a deal structure is used in that case study, let's just say. And you're like, man, I really like that. And you spend this time, you learn about how to do that deal structure. And then it's like you go around, and I see so many investors who, again, they learn this new skill, and then they're like, they're offering it to every single seller. Well, that's like taking a, square peg and going to every, regardless of what the size of the hole is, you're trying to fit it in, right? It's not going to be the right fit. So similar to commandment number one, it's not every seller is going to be a good fit, right? And so understand this, that it's similar to if you went to like Home Depot and you got a really cool tool. Let's just say you got a really cool saw. Well, every property that you go to that needs some work doesn't need that saw, right? There are jobs where it could be a great fit for, but know this, you don't want to force it. That's where you can really either hurt yourself or others. And so you want to be careful not forcing a deal structure. But I see it all the time. Folks get real excited. I know I've even been a victim to that. I get real excited about a certain deal structure and then I try to apply it everywhere. But just keep in mind, it's not always a good fit. You have to really listen to what's going on with the seller in front of you and say, hey, what deal structure could actually help them? So my tip for you here is that the more tools you have in your tool belt, the more people you can help. I want to encourage you to always be a student, right? Always be learning and learn multiple skills, right? And really show up and be a helper. All right. So my fourth commandment of creative financing is, Courtney, well, then what makes a creative finance deal happen? Right? How do deals get done? Deals get done because what is offered is better than what they currently have. And so understand this, that it is not magic to get a creative finance offer accepted. It's not even rocket science. Now, a critical mindset that you have to have is that you're not begging the seller to let you make payments for them, right? You're not trying to convince a seller here, right? Truly, you're offering a solution when you have acknowledged that they have a problem that this solution can help. You're offering a solution to them, right? And so it's important to understand and have the mindset that you're not coming at this begging sellers to do this for you, to do this big favor. And so, look, deals get done because what is being offered is better than what they currently have. Keep that in mind. All right, so the fifth commandment of creative financing is this. Yes, home runs do happen in real estate, but don't always aim for them every single time you make an offer. What do I mean by that? So home run may be stuff like zero down, 0% interest, long term without a balloon, something like that. Yes, those do happen, right? I've done plenty of them over my career. But if the only thing you're looking for is this unicorn, like home run of a deal, you're going to pass up many great deals along the way because you're looking for, again, that, well, I don't want to say it's rare, but you're looking for that almost unicorn of a deal. So know what your deal can support and know what it can't support, right? My friend Maria Giordano, she says down payment solves problems. If all you're looking for is the creative deals where there's no down payment, one of the best deals of my career included a down payment. And yeah, we don't always love, structuring a down payment, but when the rest of the deal makes sense, know when to pull the trigger, right? Like, don't always be trying to milk the deal completely 100% in your favor. Like, know when to give to be able to get. And so, because as I said, you'll miss a lot of deals. And so be very careful that you don't get so laser focused on a certain type of deal, where again you're checking off all these boxes. Know when to compromise, when the deal is good enough to be able to pull the trigger and move forward. All right. Commandment number 6 in creative financing. Don't buy a deal that your tenants can't afford. Now, this has a few layers to it. First of all, you want to be careful, and this is becoming more and more common, is you don't want to base the numbers in the deal on a heightened cash flow structure. Let me explain. So whether it's maybe you're selling it on a wrap or seller finance on the back end, maybe you are doing midterm rental, short-term rental, co-living, you know, rent by the room, whatever it may be. You want to be careful to not base your numbers on this heightened cash flow. Instead, you always want to run the numbers based on a long-term rental, right? Now, if you base it on a long-term rental and the numbers work, great. And if you can still do a short-term rental, midterm, or whatever on top, that is going to be where the deal gets extra good. But a lot of people have gotten in trouble where they don't base it on a long-term rental, and instead they say, well, I can only make this deal make sense if someone is willing to pay X amount over for me to finance it to them. And it's more than what the going rent is in the area. Or if I can rent it, furnished by the month or whatever, right? You want to be careful. You also want to be very careful with negative, based on long-term rentals, negative cash flow. Jack Miller once said, and this is especially true in a changing market, is that the greatest threat to a rental property is your monthly payment. And so plenty of folks have had to endure the suffering of negative cash flow. And it's the quickest way that you could potentially lose a property, and that you could also potentially really break that promise that you made. Like I said earlier, you're making promises, right? Maybe that's promises to the seller or payments on their behalf. So you want to be very careful. Do I believe that deals can be done with negative cash flow? Yes, but I really want to say that that should be reserved from it for advanced real estate investors who either have the deeper pockets or they've got larger portfolios and they can handle it from a cash flow perspective. Plenty new investors, if they got into that, one bad deal can take them out. So again, don't buy a deal that your tenants cannot afford and base it on long-term rental numbers. All right, creative finance commandment number 7. This one, this is another one from my old school mentors, which is balloons are for clowns. And I like to add that balloons are for clowns and for special occasions. And what I mean by that is that in a mortgage, or let's just say seller finance, right? A seller agrees to seller finance a property to me, and we're going to base the payment on a 30-year loan, okay? And which makes the payment, lower and affordable and something that my tenants can afford. But you know what? The seller says, hey, but I want you to pay me off in 5 years. So by stretching those payments over the 30 years, I can afford it. But then what we're doing is at year 5, the remaining 25 years of payments are due at that 5th year. And so that balloon payment is where the remaining like lump sum is due. And look, balloons, again, are for clowns and special occasions. And so what I mean by the clown part is you want to be very careful. I see a lot of people doing very silly things by including balloons, and they've definitely have put them in scenarios where they've hurt themselves. You want to make time fly? Put a balloon in there, right? And especially a short balloon, like a 6-month, a 12-month, a 2-year balloon. I'm more comfortable with a 5, 7-year, 10-year balloon, because really a balloon is making you predict what the market is going to be doing then. And now I can't predict what's going to happen in 5, 7, or 10 years, but I do know I can predict what would happen to my payments in 5, 7, and 10 years, that I know that I can at least pay down the loan to a certain degree. So be careful with that. Look, ultimately, there shouldn't be a one size fits all for deal structures, but especially when there's some terms that are riskier in a deal, and a balloon is a riskier term. Again, basically it's forcing you to deal make twice, right? When you structure the deal up front, and then when you either have to pay them off quickly or you have to refinance them or sell within a period of time. You want to be careful when you're inserting a riskier term, and then you just want to negotiate accordingly. If I'm going to agree to a balloon, I'm going to want to have received something else. For example, a discounted price, lower percentage of interest, something else like that. So be mindful and be very strategic when you agree to a balloon. All right, commandment number 8 in creative financing. So speaking of the different terms within the deal that you're structuring, is that wholesale terms exist. What does that mean? So a lot of you are familiar with wholesale in the sense of like a cash offer, right? And so wholesale is like a deeply discounted cash price. So, well, when it comes to creative financing, there is this plague of a belief that says you have to overpay and that you constantly have to overpay just to get a seller to say yes. And if you're walking around telling people that they're, $200,000 house, well, I can pay you 500. Well, that's not hard to get someone to do. It takes very little skill, right? Similar where if someone has no or negative equity, and especially if they have no or negative cash flow, especially in that long-term rental aspect, it takes little to no skill to get a seller to say yes to that. The reality is, it puts you in a lot riskier of a transaction when you are agreeing to overpay. And I see a lot of, especially newer folks, get into these types of deals, and really they ultimately shoot themselves in the foot because they're into a riskier deal. And most of the time when I question them and I ask them, hey, what made you offer that? Or what made you think this was a good deal? A lot of times they're so far removed from the real estate investing fundamentals that they really have no good argument. They're just like, oh, well, it was a 2.5% interest rate. Or, Oh, I don't, they said yes. And so I kind of went, I kind of blacked out and just did the deal, without further looking into it. So just because the seller says yes doesn't mean you should automatically jump into it. You want to have sound investing principles. And so wholesale terms means it can mean two things, really two or three things. Wholesale, meaning the discounted price, and then you can have market rate terms, a certain percentage down, percentage of interest, things like that. Or you could have to where you're paying at retail. So at the retail value, if it's worth 200, you're paying 200, but then you're getting discounted terms. So if you go to the bank, they're looking at 10 to 20% down. They're looking at 30 years with a 5-year balloon and, let's just say 7% interest. Well, there's a level there that you could get discounted terms. For example, no down payment, a lower interest rate, no balloon, different things like that. So wholesale terms could look like a discounted price. In normal terms, it could look like a regular price, like so retail price and discounted terms, or it could be one of my favorites, which is a combination of the two. I'm getting a discounted price, but I'm also getting discounted terms. This exists. I frequently do deals like this. Do not think that just because the deals you aren't seeing, the deals you are seeing don't have this, doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And let me kind of leave you with another thought here is that the current deals you are doing is a direct reflection of both your mindset, which you believe is possible, and your skill set, what you're able to make happen. And so that is super important because there's a lot of people who are like, well, that doesn't exist. Well, I'm here to tell you that I frequently do it. But at the same time, it's important to understand that the deals you aren't doing is a direct reflection of your mindset and your skill set. So it's another good reminder to constantly be improving your skill sets and constantly, get around other investors, especially creative investors, to see, hey, what are they doing and what are they seeing? Let's continue on here. Commandment number 9 in the creative financing world is speaking of wholesale. Now, wholesaling creative deals is the fastest way to introduce long-term risk into your business, as well as guarantee that you're making the least amount of money on the deal. Now, let me explain. This is a controversial opinion, and I actually have a video that's the 7 reasons why you shouldn't wholesale a creative deal. I'll probably tag that here below so you can watch it at the end if you want to. But remember that promise thing where you are making a promise to the seller to make payments or make payments on their behalf? Well, when you wholesale it, you're basically taking that promise and putting it up for sale. And you may know who you're wholesaling to, but you may also be wholesaling it to a stranger. So it's also one of the fastest way to put your reputation at risk. And I run a business that's complete, referral and it's a repeat business model. So my reputation is something I hold very, very, very much in esteem in the sense of like, I don't want to risk it. Um, but wholesaling creative deals is something that I'm actually frankly against, because it's more of a longer term transaction. Wholesaling a cash deal, totally for it when done right. You're wholesaling a short time frame transaction. The majority of people who I'm seeing are not wholesaling creative deals correctly. And again, I think it's the fastest way to introduce long-term risk into your business, right? Because hey, your buyer may be okay right now, but down the line, if they default, you can be drug into the issues concerning with that. But then it's getting paid, you're getting paid the least amount of money, right? Oftentimes there's plenty of other ways for you to be able to make money in that transaction, if you just know how to structure the deal better, and it comes back to your skill set. All right, last commandment here. I hope you're sticking with me, and if you've listened this far, I appreciate it. Commandment number 10. I usually have a shirt that says how you do real estate matters. It's a pretty strong mantra of mine, and it's something that I live and breathe by. So how you do real estate matters. It is twofold. So the first part of that is technical. It's the deal structuring. It is the paperwork. You want to make sure that you are, drafting, whether it's working with your attorney to draft the paperwork, whatever that may look like. You should draft by design, not by default. Okay. The other part to that is when it comes to the technical, you want to make sure you know how to protect all parties involved. I truly believe on the technical side, you should understand the deal structure you're getting into, understand the pitfalls, the risk for both parties, and then build the deal around to where everyone is protected. Now, on the other side of that is the people. How you do real estate matters. How are you treating the people involved, right? Or did I just say, do the paperwork? So I just recently said that, right? Do the paperwork to where it protects all party involved. Or if you're like, well, why do I need to do that? That's where I'm going to challenge you. How you do real estate matters. If you are like, well, I don't care if the other party's protected as long as I'm protected. Well, that's where getting into long-term agreements with individuals can become problematic. Get into long-term relationship with institutions if you don't care about the person sitting across from you. Because when you're dealing with an individual, especially long-term, that's very different. So, I want to encourage you when it comes to the people side to show up as a helper, not as a haggler, right? You want to think long term. And I promise you, this has led to deal after deal for me and has really made the creative world really come alive. And so now those are my 10 commandments for creative financing. If you want to learn how to get into creative financing, one of the best ways you can do that is by getting around other creative investors, right? It is a whole language in of itself. It's a different mindset. It is a whole thing, you guys. I personally enjoy learning from the old school guys. So here on my desk, I actually have um, one of, I think, three versions of this book. It's How to Finance Any Real Estate, Any Place, Anytime by James Misko. This is the 1994 version, but it was originally written in 1932. I am a big fan of learning from what I call the old school guys, the gray haired guys. My three biggest mentors have been investing since the 1960s and 70s and are still investing today. And so I'm a big fan of learning from the old school guys. It is very different. They approach things very different than a lot of the new school guys, right? And the new school guys have learned through volume. And look, volume can be a good teacher to a degree, but volume, when it hasn't gone through various market cycles, is not fully tested. So just keep that in mind. These have been my 10 commandments in real estate, specifically in the creative financing world. You got to let me know your thoughts below. Obviously, it was hard to kind of narrow it down to 10, but I hope this was really helpful for you. Appreciate you guys. If you haven't already subscribed, please go ahead and do so. And I will see you guys tomorrow. I am knocking out one video a day for the first 100 days of 2025. And if you haven't checked those out, I think you would really enjoy them. I'll see you guys tomorrow for the next video.